Okay, tonight we're going to look at a related item to our Sunday morning series that we've been going through, especially the last 2 weeks, in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, where it talks about the son of perdition, the man of sin, the restraining force of the Holy Spirit being removed, at the time of the rapture of the church, and how that affects the 70th week of Daniel, how it shouldn't say affect, but interrelates with it, second coming of Christ and his return, and just a whole lot of information that's there. 2 Thessalonians is kind of unique in chapter 2 because you have information there that you simply don't find anyplace else in Scripture. But it does fit in just like a really good jigsaw puzzle. The pieces in 2 Thessalonians 2 very much, snap into place in the overall prophetic picture, when you understand what the picture is and how it's supposed to fit one piece to another. The primary passage that we are looking at tonight is going to be found in the book of Revelation, and it's going to be chapter 17, because we're talking about is what you will see, I believe, can easily be identified as the world religious system of this end time period. Okay? Many of us feel that the Antichrist is always ready and awaiting the perfectly appointed opportunity to step onto the world stage. Okay? In any generation, of any century, Satan, it seems, has somebody ready to go, if that is the time that of God's appointment for the signing of the peace treaty, the rapture of the church, all the other stuff that goes with it. Let me suggest to you that you have an equally valid representation here when we take a look at this world religious system of the end times, and it already in place, at least in part. It is awaiting in the wings, just like the potential Antichrist has been. I think it's been there ever since the first century when the church was called into existence. I think it's been there through the various centuries of the past 2,000 years, and I certainly believe it's available for Satan to utilize to work this, what should I say, a relationship with the Antichrist during especially the first 3.5 years of the 70th week of Daniel. But more on that as we go. I'm just kind of giving you a heads up a little bit as well. Daniel chapter 17, I'm going to read the first few verses, but before we do that, you understand that the book of Revelation, as far as its chronology, as far as the 7 years, okay, of Daniel's prophecy, comes to a close for all practical purposes at the end of chapter 11. And then you have additional information, a parentheses statement, in chapters 12 and 13, where you get the mark of the beast and the 7 great players of the end times. And then you get additional information as far as the very end of the last 3.5 years, found in chapters 14, 15, and 16, and 17 and 18. You don't actually pick up direct chronology until you get to chapter 19, once again, where you find you could take that and dovetail it right into the end of chapter 11, that with the great earthquakes and everything that's going on right at the very end, and the bowl judgments that are described in chapter 16, and et cetera, all of that is taking place, and that Christ returns at that very time to the Mount of Olives. Okay, so chronologically, you have a parentheses that goes on for quite a few chapters and includes a whole lot of information as to all the things that are going on that God wants us to have additional details on. One of those additional details is a worldwide ecumenical religious system. Okay? Chapter 17 opens by bringing a description of that. There came one of the 7 angels who had the 7 vials. Okay, all right, and you go, well, what's he talking about? Well, he's talking about the 7 last plagues, okay, that is involved here. And the book of Revelation is full of angels, and one of them, it tells here, verse 17 of chapter 16, for instance, says, the 7th angel poured out his vial into the air. Okay, this is called the bowl judgments, the last 7, or the last of the 3 series of 7 of judgments that are found in the book of Revelation. And here it says one of, we don't know which one, and it doesn't matter. Go start your own cult on your own time, okay, when you get into a fight about that. Which had the 7 vials. He talked with me, saying, come here. He says, come here, I want to explain something to you. I will show to you the judgment of the great whore that sits upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. Now, it is not real pleasant language, we understand that, but we are talking about spiritual adultery. We're talking about, being bedded with something that is in complete opposition against God's holiness and righteousness. And he called the King James the judgment of the great whore. What do you guys have? Something that's outside of a King James? Verse 1? Anybody?
The great prostitute.
Yeah.
Prostitute?
Adults, prostitutes.
Adult prostitute? Okay.
Adulteries.
Adultery or adulterous, adulterous. I guess most prostitutes would fall into the adulterous category now that I think about it, right? Rocket science. In other words, he's describing right off the bat a situation initially we don't know. Are we talking about an individual? Are we talking about an entity, a corporation? Are we talking about some kind of a movement? What are we dealing with? Well, I'll just cut to the chase and let you know. We are talking about this end-time worldwide religious system. Okay? Now, this is different than what the Antichrist brings. Okay? Hanks, just bear with me. What you have is with the peace treaty being signed following the rapture of the church. Okay? That's a 7-year treaty, Daniel 9, verse 27. Okay? And when that peace treaty is signed, then the Antichrist, the beast of the Revelation, is moving towards consolidating his power. Now, he has enough power already from the time of the rapture of the church until the signing of the peace treaty. That's why I feel that there's a matter of at least months in there, and I'm not sure how much time. Don't know. Scripture doesn't say, so whoop-de-doo, right? But there almost has to be at least a period of time because it is following the rapture of the church that allows the chaos and anarchy in the world for the Antichrist to rise to consolidate his power. That consolidation on an international basis does not happen overnight. Okay? I mean, the last time we invaded Iraq, it took us 6 months to get there. When you're talking about combined political, financial, and military operations of multiple national groups, a large ways away, it doesn't happen in the blink of an eye. It's a process, it's an event, okay, that is drawn out a great deal, not a single day type of thing. The Antichrist then has to have at least some time following the rapture of the church to step into the spiritual vacuum and consolidate his authority and power in order to be able to convince Israel to sign a peace treaty. Okay? Again, weeks, months, maybe a little longer, I don't know. We just have no indication of it. Okay? I don't know any place in Scripture that even gives you an indicator of it. You just have to kind of figure that out as well. Now, with that time, one of the things he needs to do, even following, and this is taught clearly in Scripture, it is consolidating his power following the signing of the peace treaty. He still has to continue to work because he's got all kinds of opposition out there. Maybe it's the guerrilla movement, the underground movement, the obviously in opposition movement. I mean, you've got the powers of Gog and Magog. You've got everything from, South America to South Africa, geographically spread out all over everywhere. I mean, however you want to interpret it and package it, you be my guest. But what you have is kind of a wild and woolly time politically and militarily, where there's wars and rumors of wars as described in Matthew 24, and all kinds of stuff is going on. Okay? Armies are being moved from here to there and back and up and down, and if you read Daniel, especially chapters 7 and 8, and then eventually into chapter 10 and 11, you find a description of historical events as well as prophetical events that talk about armies being moved and alliances being made and assassinations and treaties broken and realignments, just all, and you think, wow, that sounds like today. Yeah, we haven't invented anything new. This was going on 2,500 years ago, and it's still going on today. All this stuff allows the Antichrist to manipulate and be part of that treaty making, alliance making, as he moves to consolidate his 10 nation confederacy. He eliminates 3 of the heads of that, the kings of those nations, and then sets himself up as the power. All this takes some time, okay? All this takes some time. And this is primarily following that signing of the peace treaty. Okay, some of it, yeah, you can see it developing ahead of time, but a lot of it following. During this time, you have the initial aspects of God's wrath being poured out. You've got the book of Revelation, chapter 6 especially, okay, talking about the initial judgments, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, for instance. 25% of the world's population dies during that time. Now, it always kind of interests me when I run into people that say, well, that whole 4 horsemen thing is just the beginning of sorrows. It's not really part of the tribulation. And I'm saying, you're going to kill off over 2 billion people,
Tribulation.
and it's not tribulation. I mean, this is some pretty, anyway, you kind of get the idea of what's going on here. Now, there's some interesting things that you need to remember here, and it's kind of hard to condense a lot of this, but you kind of get the idea. What is being spoken of here by this angelic messenger that has come to, obviously God has provided this for John's understanding, is for the judgment of the great prostitute, the great whore. Okay? To understand that, you've got to kind of figure out what the relationship is. Because what you have is the Antichrist wants to consolidate world power. He's begun building this. He's got this confederacy. He signed a nation. Signing the peace treaty with Israel puts him into a difficult position militarily, politically as well, but think of the military stuff. How much military resources does he have to divert from other conquering opportunities in order to provide an adequate defense for Israel? Okay? Stop and think about it. I mean, so he's going to be fighting on multiple fronts, and that's kind of like the futility of starting a land war in China. It's wow, that's a good way to lose. I mean, Hitler found that out when he started going to multiple fronts during World War II. It's kind of hard to do that. You're a lot better off picking out one and annihilating him and then attacking the next one, rather than multiples at once. So what you have here is the Antichrist is doing his best. So he's looking for opportunity. He's looking for resources to allow him to build an even broader power base. Okay? What better resource than something that's already available? okay? Worldwide religion. Okay? Now, people immediately get on some bandwagon, it's kind of like, which guy is 666, that we've talked about before. That's not the point. That's not what John is recording, and it's not the point at all. It makes no difference, okay? You have waiting in the wings. You have the potential for a worldwide ecumenical religious system to jump onto the scene. Historically, you've seen some of this kind of floating if you go back through history. Okay, this is the whole idea, of the Ottoman Empire, for instance. It's the whole idea of the spread of Catholicism. It's the idea of world integration of our religious system as the only one. Convert or die, whatever it happens to be. And I don't care whether, what you are, what kind of group or world religious system or anywhere else, you're always looking for converts. Even if you have to proselyte them at the end of the sword, you're looking for converts. You want to bring everybody into the fold. Okay? And I could bore you with all kinds of stories, from a number of different religious groups, whether it's Confucianism or Catholicism or Zoroastrianism, or even modern Mormonism and so forth, that have the same idea in mind. Okay, they want to spread their religious philosophy throughout the world, and in doing so, they are going to wind up with political, military, and economic dominion. Okay, because they're going to have their people in the positions to call the shots. Okay? Most of you aren't old enough, but there was a real concern when Richard Nixon ran for the presidency, because he was a Quaker. Okay? Well, at least entitled. Okay? But there was a concern there, because Quakers are pacifists in their philosophy, and if he was elected president, how would that affect his decision-making as the commander-in-chief of the nation? Get the idea? Now, if Satan is empowering the Antichrist, he comes by and he makes a real easy call. Following the vacuum created by the removal of genuine biblical Christianity with the rapture, you're going to have one of the effects of that is going to be a tremendous whirling of religious proselytation and evangelism, false religion, cults, and so on. But they're all going to try to dive into that void. A lot of people are going to be asking, where'd Aunt Marjorie go? There's going to be a lot of questions and a lot of guessing, a lot of speculation. And Satan is going to use false religions to step in there, and create a religious power base. Okay, you have today, everybody points fingers at the Muslims, and that type of thing as they, spread, their particular philosophy. But the Catholic Church has been doing it now for 1,500 years. Okay, and they've got toeholds and absolute bastions, of defensive positions, I'll put it that way, scattered throughout the world. Virtually all of South America is Catholic, and Central America as well. Now it's paganized, but who cares? If you're Catholic, you don't care. If you're in the Catholic hierarchy, that's perfectly okay. The idea is to reach them on their own turf and level and bring them into. But we're not trying to vilify Catholicism or any of the other isms that are out there doing this stuff. We're just saying that is already in the world. Okay? These are not Christian people. They are not going to be raptured, and their movements are not going to be adversely affected at all because believers get raptured. It's going to, in fact, give them really amazing opportunity to jump into the spiritual void, and out of this, you're going to wind up with what the scriptures call here the great prostitute, the great whore. You're going to wind up with a worldwide religious system that apparently, I use that word, just mark it. Use the word apparently, seemingly, it looks like, or however you want to look at it. It winds up making some type of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours with the rising power of the Antichrist. Okay? And basically rides to power. That's why you have this description that follows, okay? The judgment of the great whore that sits upon many waters. Okay, waters here has to do with Gentile nations or peoples. It's used that way over and over in prophetic scripture. So we realize that this false religious system is worldwide. That's what's being indicated. Many waters. That's what you think. The kings of the earth have committed fornication. Not a pleasant concept. Spiritually speaking, they've compromised in order to promote their own causes. This is not unlikely. Politicians will jump into bed, pardon the expression, with virtually anybody that seemingly will benefit their cause and their own agenda. You got some really weird bedmates out there in the political world. You have some equally strange partnerships sometimes even in the ecumenical religious world. Okay? Most of us are old enough to remember, back row maybe excluded, the great moral majority movement. You remember that of the 80s? The Jerry Falwell thing that, you wound up with ecumenicals, you wound up with Catholic, the ECT agreement, okay? Evangelicals and Catholics together, a regular concord, a regular manifesto, and you think, wow, and boy did I get the heat for raising my voice on that. That was, that's been 35, 40 years ago now. And he said, well, we can agree upon a lot of things. Really? Try the 5 solas. Well, now we don't want to get too picky. Grace alone, faith alone, Christ alone, yeah, right. That's too picky. We're talking about the eternal destiny of men and their salvation. That's not too picky. But there were a lot of evangelical Christians that bought right into that and partnered right with the great moral majority movement, because they could further a cause. So we'll just kind of ignore that and say that's not important. Like how you get to heaven, is not important. Okay. You kind of get the idea of what's going on here. That's why we're talking about this commission of spiritual fornication with the kings of the earth. Now, the angel carries John away in the spirit. That's a little s. Okay? We're not exactly sure. This is not a bodily, beam me up, Scotty type of thing here. This is, the angel takes John to someplace to be able to see the reality of this vision in the wilderness. And he says, I saw a woman sitting upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names and blasphemy, and the beast has 7 heads and 10 horns. Boy, if you've read the book of Daniel, you got a pretty good idea of who we're talking about here, okay? You're talking about that rebuilt Roman Confederacy. You're talking about this beast that can't be described in, chapter 7 of Daniel, beginning at about verse 8 and following. You have, a description of this, it's not a leopard, it's not a bear, it's not, this is so weird, that it can't even be described, but guess how many horns and how many heads, and, you get the idea, everything that's there. The verse 4 says, the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color. This has to do with religious piety, religious functions. These are the primary colors, of a number of today's world religious movements. as far as their priesthood and their high-end ruling guys, it's everything that's there. Decked with gold, precious stones, pearls. She has a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. Yeah, it's not, a nice glass of wine that we're talking about here. We're talking about ugly, aren't we? And upon her forehead was a name written, and King James puts commas in what don't really probably belong. Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Okay? Well, we see here that this woman riding this beast, that the beast, according to chapter 13, all you got to do is flip back there, verse 1, says the beast that came out of the sea had 7 heads and 10 horns. Ta-da! Another piece of the puzzle snaps into place. The woman is arrayed in all these fancy things that speak of self-glory and wealth and worth and everything that goes with it, but in reality, what she's participating in is abomination and filthiness. And her name is Babylon the Great. Mystery is not actually in the Greek grammar part of her name. Okay, that is a description of the name. In other words, it's descriptive. It talks about, kind of like big red house. Okay, house is the noun. The big and the red are the adjectives that work. Same kind of an idea here. Okay, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Okay, where'd Babylon come from? A little town called Babel. Some of you, it's often pronounced Babel, but it's only got one B in it. On the plains of Shinar. That's modern day Iraq. Okay, it's Genesis chapter 10 and chapter 11. You remember Nimrod? Old Nimmy, the guy who was the hunter of men and built himself, this city after city he conquered so that he could have his own little empire, and, this whole tower, that God had to destroy and confuse the languages and everything, whole story in itself. Well, Nimrod, interestingly, had a wife by the name of Semiramis. Anybody heard of her? Nobody's named your kid Semiramis. I would suggest you don't. It has bad connotations to it. She had a child, male child, by the name of Tammuz. Okay? It supposedly of miraculous conception, even though she was married to Nimrod. Miraculous conception. Tammuz was killed by a beast, and Semiramis went through some religious hocus pocus and claimed to have brought him back to life. Okay, and he became, because of her power, he became the idol of the Babylonian descendants. Okay, now if this doesn't strike you as similar to the life of Christ and his miraculous conception and birth, and everything that you get to see all kinds of similarities, everything. Okay, Babylon's priests, by the way, as they ebbed and flowed down through the centuries, all the way from way back there, they rose, and sometimes it was stronger, and a century would go by, and they'd fall into disfavor. Their priests were called the keepers of the bridge. That mean anything to you? How about if I use the term Pontifex Maximus? That's one of the names for the Catholic Pope, Pontifex Maximus. Okay? That's what the Latin term for keeper of the bridge is. It is the connector, according to Babylonian religions, including this one right here in chapter 17, it's the connector between man and God. That's not any surprise. The Catholic Pope says that when he sits ex cathedra on the throne, he speaks as God. He is, in fact, the very voice of God speaking. That's why he claims infallibility, because God doesn't make mistakes. of course, the difficulty is when one pope that's infallible contradicts the next pope, or the last pope, who's equally infallible. They usually explain that around or just ignore it, but it's one of those things as well. So Babylon, as you can imagine, became a symbol. The term itself and the religion itself became not only a symbol, but the source for blasphemy and false religion in general. It was a term that is used throughout Scripture of any false idolatrous situation or system. And this one becomes, remember, many waters, becomes a worldwide. This one rises, and I believe that not only is it on the back of here, she rides the beast, right? So there's the picture of she is working as a partnership arrangement in the religious area to come to power. And what she doesn't realize is the beast, the Antichrist, is using her at the same time to consolidate the world religious system so that through her he can become even more powerful and rise to the end result of this. Okay? That's what you're talking about. So this whole religious system that's there, and with the entire removal of genuine Christianity. Now you have the false, the pseudo-Christianity of Mystery Babylon. Babylon the great whore that rises to power in that vacuum, and the Antichrist encourages it for the first 3.5 years. And remember, you're talking about a 7-year, fulfillment of the last portion of the prophecy that Daniel gave in chapter 9. Okay? So you have a lot of things going on here. We'll talk about that midpoint in just a moment, to kind of give you that perspective. Okay? This is not a very favorable description of somebody you want to partner with. Especially as a believer, especially as a Christian entity, a Christian church. That's why the church has to be removed, otherwise there'd be all kinds of antagonism, hostility, objection, to the rise of this world religious system. And, it's easier to work with. And I'm not trying to pick on the people who had good intentions in the great majority, the moral majority movement. Most of them had good intentions, not all of them. Okay? That ecumenicism that was introduced there on not only a national but on a limited basis, at least an international scale, you could almost use that for a model that seems like it's what is going to be put into place on an international basis. And how that's going to work is you have to have a dominant philosophy within a religious system that simply says, we can work with you. I know we have differences. You have 5 solas. We don't have any, but we can work that out. That's not really important. The important thing right now is to take care of the hungry people. Okay? The important thing right now is to have a ceasefire so that we can get aid up into Gaza. Yeah, right. That's fat chance that's going to work. With Hamas running Gaza, you know where that's going to go. Now, not that there aren't needy people there, and not that we shouldn't make every effort to try to find a way, but so what you have here is this consolidation of this religious system that says we can work with you. Okay, just because we have differences, the world situation is in an upheaval. Let's face it. We had 113 million people just disappear 3 months ago. And, there is a real need to be able to anchor the people of our countries in solid religious grounding. You anchor them your way, we'll anchor them our way, we'll all work together and we'll have this great big keen anchor point. And pretty soon you have ecumenicism to the point that nobody really has any actual things that they believe on an issue of faith. You know, they're just kind of going along like lemmings following the piper. Okay? Yeah, that's kind of the picture of what you have here. You know, you've got some other things as we go on, and just briefly, before I wrap up a few things at the end. Verse 6 says, I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. Now you have probably, if you don't have a King James, he was astonished. He was astonished on look at how this false religious worldwide ecumenical system has been able to do this. She is now out openly killing actual believers. You know, I mean, chapter 7 talks about this. You know, it's you know, everything that goes with it. And he said, I'm amazed because she's being patted on the back. She's got the approval of the world system, you know, for going out and persecuting. Wow. The angel said to me, what are you astonished at? I get a kick out of this. My personality fits right in here. I said, why would you be shocked at this? You know, don't you know anything about how cults and false religions work? You know, I mean, come on, John, you've been around the block a couple of times. You've seen some of this stuff in a limited way in your own lifetime. Why in the world would you be astonished at this type of thing? This is just a much larger scale that's going to impact the entire world system. So he just turns it loose. That's kind of my take on it anyway. I'll tell you the mystery of the woman and the beast that carried her, who has 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast you saw was and is not, will ascend out of the bottomless pit. Talking about satanic power. Don't have time to go into all the what ifs. And do you think that? He's going to go into perdition. They that dwell on the earth will wonder, whose name's not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is and not yet is. Okay? So you have, you know, all kinds of things that are going on here that I'm just kind of frankly going to have to skip over a little bit in order to clear it up. Verses 9 through 11. Here's the mind that has wisdom. He said, you want to know what all this stuff actually means so you're not kind of astonished at what's going on? I mean, are you in shell shock? I mean, the angel takes him out and gives him this vision, you know, and John's just going, you know, and the whites of his eyes are showing, and he's got a weak pulse, and, you know, he's kind of clammy on the surface and about weak-kneed probably. And, you know, the angel says, hey, buck up. He says, you know, what do you, should not be amazing to you. This is the way world religious systems work. You know, this is the way the power brokers work together. Now, you've got politics and you've got religion. Sometimes they work together. Sometimes they just look like they're working together. Sometimes they hate each other and work together anyway, because each one of them has its own agenda. The reality is that the beast, the Antichrist's agenda is world dominion, and he's going to roll right over the top of world religion, okay, in just a heartbeat or two here, so, or maybe 3 or 4. So here's the mind. If you want to know what's going on, here, you don't have to take my word for it. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. Now, historically, people have jumped on the fact that Rome was originally, when it was a tiny little place, had 7 hills, that it was geographically. You're on pretty shaky ground there, you know, even without an earthquake to rattle the hills, okay? Because they're not mountains. The other thing too is the term mountains is used for kingdoms in prophetical literature. So this is a symbolic type of thing, you know, with the symbols. There are 7 kings, and you can get all kinds of stuff here. 5 are fallen, 1 is, and the other's not yet come. When he comes, he must continue a short while. And the beast that was and is not, he's the 8th and is of the 7 and goes into perdition. Well, we know who the 8th is. Okay, the 8th is the Antichrist. There have been various theories, speculations, entertaining notions, stupid comments, about the rest of this stuff. But you can come up with all kinds of things. One of the more possible, and without any dogmatism, is when you go back and look at world kingdoms. In biblical history, you start with Egyptian, okay? In prophetic literature, okay, Egypt, Assyrian, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, ancient Rome, and then you're going to have modern Rome at some point, the rebuilt confederacy, and then you're going to have the Antichrist. I have no idea how possible that is or whatever. Again, different people throw different bricks at other different people, and you get the idea. The idea here is there's an alliance between the world church and the Antichrist, okay, at this point in time. The chronology, by the way, if you're interested in chronology, chapter 17 is going to stop at the middle of the 70th week, okay? Chapter 18, talking about what we call commercial Babylon, stops at the second advent. They're two, similar descriptions in some ways, but you get the idea. Okay, let's go on and wrap it up. He said in verse 12, the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings that have received no kingdom as yet. No, remember this was written in John's day, 1900 years ago. And he says they haven't come back to power yet. Okay, not going to happen, but will receive power as kings for 1 hour with the beast. Again, using figurative language to talk about a very short period of time with the beast. In other words, they're not going to get power until the Antichrist comes on the scene. So people are running around today talking about the European Union or the Confederated States of this, that, or the next thing, or some kind of alliance or trade platform. Is that, no, it's not. It's not even going to come until the beast shows up. So, don't worry about it. These have one mind and give their power and strength to the beast. They will make war with the Lamb. The Lamb will overcome them. Yeah, that's called the Battle of Armageddon. For he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called, chosen, and faithful. That's me. I hope it's also you. But it's, that's the saints that come back with Christ, described there in Revelation 19. The great trail ride, as they put it, okay? Worldwide, verse 15, it says, and he, the angel, said to me, the waters, verse 1, the waters, the nations, that this worldwide ecumenical system is involved with, the nations. He said that you saw where the horse sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages. And you thought I made it up half hour ago, didn't you? Yeah, you did. I didn't. The 10 horns which you saw on the beast, this talk about the 10 kingdoms of the Antichrist's reformed core confederacy, will hate the whore, will make her desolate, naked, eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. In other words, they're going to annihilate her. So what do you have here? And when does this happen? Simple. When the Antichrist sets himself up as God in the rebuilt temple in Jerusalem, institutes the mark of the beast and says, you will worship me. At that point, he has declared himself as the head of a world religious system, and tells us here that the ecumenical system that has ridden the back of his political and military gains for 3.5 years is going to be destroyed. Okay? It's going to annihilate, this worldwide system of religious effort that has gone in there. You remember Jesus in Matthew 24, verse 15, said, when you see the abomination that makes desolate sitting in the holy place, okay, you're going to have this, the Antichrist is going to be according to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 that we covered, the part that we covered last week, he's going to be sitting in the temple declaring himself to be God. The worldwide ecumenical system is not going to be able to cohabitate with a religious dictator. Okay? Won't happen. Okay? So he's going to, according to this, the rise of the Antichrist to world power at the midpoint of the 70th week is going to equally demand the demise, the destruction of the world ecumenical religious system that he has worked hand in glove with for the last 3.5 years, or possibly even more. It may have preceded even the signing of the peace treaty. You kind of get the idea as well. Okay, the final form of the world religion prior to the second coming. Okay, that's what you have described here. Not a very pretty picture of what's going on as well. Verse 18, if you're wondering about verse 18, verse 17, God hath put in their hearts, talking about the 10-nation confederacy, this is the ruling cadre. Okay, these are the ruling power brokers for dominating the world. Okay, and the Antichrist is the head monkey. He is the one, you mess with him, he's already assassinated 3 of them. He'll take you out. Okay? So they are there as his rubber stamps. He is the world dictator, but they are the ones following through with all this. God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, to agree and give their kingdom to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. Which he's talking about the second coming of Christ. Okay. So the world religious system described here in Revelation 17 is now destroyed at the middle of Daniel's 70th week. Okay. Now you see all this pictured, by the way, in chapter 9, verse 27 of Daniel, where the morning and evening oblation have been caused to cease. Okay, the Antichrist has put a stop to the Jewish religious system, right along with any other religious system in the world. Okay, all describes the same instance. Okay. Verse 18, the woman which you saw is that great city who reigns over the kings of the earth. People again get into this. Okay, the woman is the city, it's Babylon. Are we talking about, some people say, well, we're going to have to rebuild Babylon. But if we're talking about the symbology of the great whore, I'm not sure that that is demanded. It's Jerusalem, by the way, has been called spiritual Babylon. Peter, amongst others, called it that. You've got all kinds of interpretations of this. Be careful being dogmatic about it. But chapter 17 is a description of this worldwide ecumenical church. And, once the real church is gone, all you've got left is the imitations. I often think, and just a note to close, I often think of the role and the difficulty and the adversity of the appointment of those Jewish evangelists described in Revelation chapter 7. Okay? And the uphill battle their ministry is going to have to deal with during that 70th week. There's debate over, are they appointed at the very beginning of the 70th week? Are they appointed immediately following the rapture of the church? Are they appointed in the middle of the 70th week and we go, help yourself? There's strong points and weak points depending upon your point of view. Okay? But we do know that they are real, they are sealed, appointed and sealed by God to carry the gospel of the kingdom, which has got some different nuances than the gospel of the cross that we preach for the church. But you've got, it's the same thing with the solas, that's not the issue. But now the church has been raptured. You've got a different situation on earth with some different contextual aspects that make it kind of interesting. But we know that Christ says the gospel of the kingdom is going to be preached throughout all points of the earth. Okay? Primarily because of the ministry of those 144,000 Jewish young men. Okay? Are they going to live? Are they going to be martyred? You know, well, yeah, it's going to be tough. Going to be tough. So anyway, have a word of prayer, and if you got some questions, we'll go from there. Father, thank you. Huge amount of information and material found in this chapter. Much supporting data from other places in Revelation and other places in Scripture that we haven't even touched on. But I pray, Lord, that we might have an idea of what the world is going to have to face in the end times. It's not going to be anything like we'll just kick back after the church is gone and coast. Wow, pretty grim scene. And as you have strange bed partners that arise even today in politics and religion, and have had through the centuries, this is going to be the ultimate pairing of the woman who rides the beast. So let us understand it better, appreciate you more fully for giving us the opportunity to understand it. In Christ's name, amen.